The next question, I give you the same information. I want you to find out what's the total basic and non-basic employments in the region using the basic approach that we introduced in class. If you remember what we have introduced in the class is that every industry could have a basic and non-basic employment component. Every industry serves local people first. That amount of employment will be non-basic. If a specific industry have a actual capacity after serving local people, and they will be producing for exporting services for external demand, and that portion of employment in that industry will be basic employment. And this is a formula we introduced as a basic approach. So for a specific industry, say industry I, for the non-basic employment, it is expected to be the proportion of employment of this industry in the country, in the nation, multiplied by the total employment of your region. And this is share of a specific industry in the country, and this is total employment of your region, your study area. And this NBI, non-basic employment I, is the amount of employment you need to fully satisfy local demand. At the same time, you do have certain amount of employment in this specific industry. So if the amount of employment you have in this industry is more than what you need to fully satisfy local demand, in this case, this industry will have actual capacity of serving external demand, and therefore you have a basic employment share in this industry, and that will be the difference between EI and NBI. But if the available employment in this industry in your region is smaller than what you need to fully satisfy local demand, in this case, you don't have actual capacity for serving external demand. That means, your basic employment for this industry will be 0. At the same time, what you have in this industry will be all non-basic. That means all jobs or workers in this industry will be working for serving local people's demand. So now let's work on the agricultural industry. So for agricultural industry, the amount of non-basic employment you need to fully satisfy your local demand is this amount. So here is you look at what proportion of employment in the country, and then you need this proportion of employment in agriculture to fully satisfy local demand. And in the country, you have 13% of people to working in the agricultural industry. And therefore, to fully satisfy local people's demand out of your 15,000 workers, if you have 13% working in agriculture, you will have the right capacity to fully satisfy local people's demand. And therefore, you need 1,875 workers to work to serve local people's demand. But meanwhile, in the reality, in the agricultural industry, you only have 1,000 people working here. And therefore, you don't have enough capacity for satisfy local people's demand because you have lower than what you need. That's 1,875 workers to fully satisfy local demand. And therefore, as a result, all you have in this industry, that 1,000 workers in the agriculture industry will be working to serve local people's demand. At the same time, you don't have actual capacity for serving external demand for exporting agricultural goods, and therefore your non-basic employment is what you have in your region, 1,000 people, and the basic employment in the agricultural industry is 0. And for the service industry, you do the same thing. You look at the national share of service employment and you multiply it by your region's total employment. So in the country, we have 38 percentage of people working in the service industry, and therefore if we need 38% of out of 15,000 workers in your region to work in the service industry, and you will be able to fully satisfy local people's demand. That is, if in the region you have 5,625 workers working in the service industry, your local demand will be fully satisfied. And meanwhile, in the reality, in your region, you have 6,000 workers working in the service industry. That's what you need, more than what you need for satisfy local demand. And therefore, you do have actual capacity for serving external demand after serving local demand. And non-basic employment is 5,625. And the basic employment in the service industry is what you have, that's 6,000 people, minus amount of people you need to work for satisfy local demand, that's 5,625 people, and you have actually 375 people for external demand, that's for exporting purposes. Similarly, for the manufacturing industry, we do the same thing. In the country, we have 50% of workers working in the manufacturing industry, and therefore in the region, if you have 50% of workers working in this industry, and you will be able to fully satisfy local demand, that's 7,500 people. And in reality, in your region, you have 8,000 people, and therefore you have more than what you need to satisfy local demand, and therefore you have an actual capacity for external demand. The non-basic employment, the amount of people working for local demand is non-basic employment is 7,500 jobs workers, and the actual capacity, that difference between what you have 8,000 and what you need for satisfy local demand is 7,500. The difference is 500 people. The actual capacity will be serving external demand, and therefore this amount of employment is basic employment.